James Carter, a highly respected CEO and visionary in the tech industry, seemed to have it all. A thriving career, a life filled with luxury, and a devoted wife, Samantha, who had stood by him through the toughest of times. Yet, the weight of his ego and the pressures of success led James to make impulsive, thoughtless decisions. Ultimately, those choices unraveled his seemingly perfect life, culminating in a painful divorce. Samantha, left to rebuild her life on her own, carried a secret. She was pregnant with a child James never knew existed. The restaurant glowed with warm golden light, accompanied by the gentle notes of a piano in the background. Its elegance mirrored the image James projected to the world, polished, composed, and in complete control. Seated at a table, James shared the evening with Claudine, a charming partner whose smile and vibrant laughter filled the space. They celebrated yet another massive milestone, a multi-million-dollar contract that guaranteed another year of unparalleled success for James's company. Yet beneath his confident facade, James felt a gnawing emptiness he couldn't explain, a faint discomfort he brushed aside like so many other feelings he had ignored. As Claudine animatedly discussed their upcoming plans, including a trip to Paris, James's attention drifted. His gaze wandered across the room, landing on a familiar figure that made his heart skip a beat. Behind the counter, with her hair tied back in a simple bun and clad in a worn uniform, stood Samantha, his ex-wife. His pulse quickened, not just at the sight of her, but at what was unmistakably visible, the round swell of her belly beneath her apron. Samantha was pregnant. The shock hit James like a tidal wave, leaving him frozen in place. He tried to look away, but couldn't. Samantha looked different, tired, yet resolute. The dark circles under her eyes told a story of exhaustion, but her demeanor exuded strength, a kind he hadn't seen before. She carried herself like someone who had weathered life's storms and emerged stronger. Samantha moved about the restaurant, clearing tables and tending to customers, seemingly oblivious to James's intense stare. Noticing his distraction, Claudine frowned and touched his hand gently. "James, is everything okay?" she asked, her concern evident. "Yes," he replied stiffly. "I just thought I saw someone I knew." His voice carried an edge of tension, but Claudine wasn't convinced. She followed his gaze to the counter where Samantha stood. "Who is she?" Claudine asked, her curiosity piqued. "No one," James said quickly, trying to dismiss the matter, though his mind churned with questions. Who was the father? How had Samantha ended up here? He knew she had struggled after their split. He'd made sure to block her out completely. Now, guilt gnawed at him. When Samantha finally noticed James, their eyes met briefly, and a flash of shock and pain crossed her face. She quickly looked away, determined to pretend she hadn't seen him, and went back to her work. But James couldn't focus anymore. Rising abruptly from his chair, he muttered, "I need a moment," to Claudine and strode toward the counter. As James approached, Samantha's discomfort was palpable. She tried to avoid him, but he was persistent. "Samantha," he called out, his voice carrying a mix of authority and unease, "we need to talk." "I'm working, James," she replied sharply, not meeting his eyes. "This isn't the time." "I don't care. This can't wait," he said, his gaze fixed on her stomach. "What's going on here? Are you pregnant?" Samantha finally looked up, and the intensity of her glare made James falter. "That's none of your business," she said icily. "You lost the right to ask anything about my life." James opened his mouth to respond, but a customer called out to Samantha, breaking the tension. As she turned away to attend to her duties, James stood rooted to the spot, grappling with emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. The perfect world he'd built for himself was beginning to crumble. She took the chance to step away, leaving James behind with a storm of unanswered questions and a simmering frustration. Returning to the table, he found Claudine already visibly annoyed. She crossed her arms, her expression sharp. "Are you going to tell me what's going on, or do I have to guess?" she demanded. "It's nothing," James lied, though the turmoil inside him made it impossible to believe his own words. Samantha was pregnant, and the revelation unsettled him in ways he couldn't fully understand. As he and Claudine left the restaurant, the image of Samantha wouldn't leave his mind. That night, sleep eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, pregnant and struggling to make ends meet. Deep down, he sensed there was more to the story, something Samantha wasn't telling him. The realization weighed heavily on him, but what James didn't know was that this encounter was no coincidence. It was the beginning of a chain of events that would unearth buried secrets, betrayals, and choices he could never undo. The next morning, James sat in his sleek, glass-paneled office at Carter Enterprises, unable to focus. His mind was miles away from the reports and contracts scattered across his desk. Instead, he kept replaying the sight of Samantha, pregnant and working tirelessly at the restaurant. He needed answers, now. Reaching for his phone, James dialed Liam, his best friend and trusted lawyer. Liam had always been his voice of reason, offering practical advice whenever James's impulsive nature got the better of him. When Liam answered, his relaxed tone suggested he'd just come from one of his leisurely tennis matches. "James, what's going on? You sound tense," Liam said, his voice casual but curious. "I need your help," James said hesitantly. "It's about Samantha." A brief silence followed before Liam responded, his tone more serious now. "Samantha, you haven't talked to her in months. What's going on?" "I saw her last night," James admitted. "She was working in a restaurant and—" He paused, the words catching in his throat before he forced them out. "She's pregnant." Liam's surprise was evident. "Pregnant? Are you sure it's serious?" "Yes, and I need to know if the baby is mine," James said, his voice wavering slightly. "If it is, how could she not tell me?" Liam sighed, the weight of the situation sinking in. "James, you know she couldn't hide something like this forever. Maybe she tried to tell you, and you weren't listening." The guilt hit James like a cold wave. He knew Liam was right. After the divorce, he had cut Samantha out of his life entirely, blocking any form of communication. Still, the thought that he might have a child he didn't know about ignited a mix of anger and helplessness inside him. "Can you look into it for me?" James asked, his tone firm. "Find out how she's doing, where she's living, if she has anyone in her life." Liam hesitated. "Are you sure you want to go down that road? It might open up things you're not ready to face." "I need to know, Liam. I can't ignore this," James insisted. Meanwhile, Samantha was doing her best to stick to her daily routine. Working at the restaurant wasn't the life she had imagined, but it was her reality now. Every day of her pregnancy was a quiet battle. The baby growing inside her reminded her of what she had lost, but also of what she still had to protect. She couldn't shake the unease that James's sudden appearance had left behind. She knew deep down that it wasn't a random encounter. The thought weighed on her as she finished another exhausting shift, unsure of what might come next. Samantha sat quietly on a bench in the small courtyard behind the restaurant. The night air was cold but refreshing, a welcome contrast to the suffocating heat of the kitchen. She rested her hands gently on her belly, her expression a mix of love and worry. The baby growing inside her was everything she had now, the one thing that kept her moving forward. But seeing James again had stirred up fears she'd buried deep, fears she couldn't ignore any longer. "Are you okay?" came a voice. Amanda, one of her co-workers and the only person Samantha trusted, approached. Amanda was young, with a kind heart, and a knack for sensing when something was wrong. Samantha forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired." Amanda wasn't convinced. "You've been thinking about him, haven't you? It's impossible to hide. Who was that guy yesterday?" Samantha sighed, realizing there was no point in dodging the question. "It was James, my ex-husband." Amanda's eyes widened. "The baby's father?" Samantha hesitated before nodding. "Yes, but he doesn't know, and I'd prefer it stayed that way." Amanda frowned, concern etched on her face. "Do you think he'll leave it alone? Men like him don't take being left in the dark lightly, especially about something like this." "I know," Samantha admitted, biting her lip, "but I don't want him involved. He destroyed everything we had, and when I needed him most, he turned his back on me." Amanda placed a comforting hand on Samantha's shoulder. "Maybe he's changed, but whatever happens, you need to protect yourself and your baby above all else." The next day, James received a preliminary report from Liam. It was short, but enough to unsettle him further. Samantha was living in a modest apartment in a less affluent part of the city, working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. There was no sign of a new relationship or any indication that someone else could be the baby's father. James felt his emotions boil over, whether it was guilt, anger, or a mixture of both. The thought of Samantha struggling on her own while he thrived in his world of luxury was unbearable. He decided he needed to confront her again. He needed to hear the truth directly from her. That evening, James returned to the restaurant. It was near the end of Samantha's shift when he saw her clearing a table. Their eyes met, and she shook her head, irritation clear in her expression as he approached. "James, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone sharp and tired. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice tinged with urgency. "Samantha, this can't go on. I need to know the truth. Is the baby mine?" Samantha paused, her eyes locked on his, the tension between them thick. After a moment, she spoke, her voice steady and firm. "Even if it is yours, James, you don't deserve to be part of this child's life," she said. "You left me when I needed you the most. Why should I trust you now?" James felt as if she'd struck him. "I know I've made mistakes," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "But that doesn't mean I don't have the right to know if I have a child. Samantha, you can't make this decision alone." She stepped closer, pain flickering in her eyes. "I had to make this decision alone because you gave me no choice. You abandoned me, James. When I needed you, you turned away. I couldn't count on you then, and I don't believe I can count on you now." Their tense exchange was interrupted by Amanda, who arrived to collect Samantha for an errand. As Samantha turned to leave, she gave James one last look, a look filled with unspoken pain and determination. In that moment, James felt a deep certainty that the child was his, and he realized that winning back Samantha's trust would be far more difficult than he had imagined. Samantha walked out of the restaurant and into the cold night air, her heart heavy but resolute. Whatever happened, she was determined to protect her child and herself, no matter the cost. The workday had finally ended, and all Samantha wanted was a few moments of peace before heading back to her small apartment. Sitting on a bench in the quiet courtyard behind the restaurant, she ran her hand gently over her belly. The baby's subtle movements brought a bittersweet feeling, a mix of deep love and overwhelming sadness. Amanda, her kind-hearted co-worker, approached with 2 steaming cups of tea. "Here, you need this," Amanda said, handing Samantha a cup. "Thanks," Samantha replied, forcing a weak smile as Amanda sat beside her. There was a brief silence before Amanda hesitated, her concern evident. "Samantha, I know this is hard, but I think you need to tell me. What happened between you and James? Why are you so determined to keep him away?" Samantha's eyes filled with a pain she had been holding back for far too long. Whether it was the weight of exhaustion or Amanda's gentle persistence, she finally felt ready to let it out. "James and I met at the height of my career," Samantha began, her voice trembling but steady. "I was a top marketing strategist at a multinational company. I loved my job. It was everything I had worked so hard for. When I met James, he was charming, ambitious, and full of dreams. He said he wanted a partner to build a life with, and I believed him." She paused, her gaze drifting to a distant memory. "After we got married, everything started to change. James climbed the corporate ladder quickly, becoming this powerful figure, surrounded by influential people. At first, I was proud of him, but little by little, my own life took a back seat. He asked me to quit my job, to focus on supporting him and managing our home. He said I wouldn't need to work because he would provide everything." Amanda frowned. "You gave up your career for him?" Samantha nodded. "I loved him, and at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. But as the years went by, he changed. The business trips became constant. The dinners turned into endless meetings, and the time we spent together grew shorter and shorter. When I brought up going back to work, he dismissed it, saying it wasn't necessary and that my role was to support him." Samantha took a deep breath, bracing herself for the harder parts of her story. And then the betrayals started. Amanda's eyes widened. "Betrayals? You mean he cheated on you?" "Yes," Samantha said, her voice heavy with hurt. "At first, They were just suspicions. He became cold, distant, always glued to his phone. But then I found the messages. He was planning trips and dates with other women while I stayed home alone. And the things he said about me, he called me a burden, said I was useless, that I did nothing but spend his money. He even mocked my family with those women. Amanda's face was a mixture of shock and sympathy. Samantha, how did you endure all of that? I couldn't, Samantha admitted, her voice breaking. One day I confronted him. I told him I knew about the affairs and demanded respect. But he just laughed. He said I didn't understand how the world worked, that he was the breadwinner, and if I didn't like it, I could leave. She swallowed hard. That's when I knew our marriage was over. Amanda placed a comforting hand over Samantha's. And after the divorce, did you ever think about asking him for help? Samantha shook her head. I thought about it, but how could I? He destroyed me, Amanda. He left me with nothing. No job, no savings, and I found out I was pregnant just weeks after the divorce. My family has always been supportive, but I hate feeling like a burden to them. I had to find a way to stand on my own. Her voice grew firmer as she continued. This job, as hard as it is, was the only thing I could get after being out of the workforce for so long. I've humbled myself, swallowed my pride, and worked tirelessly just to get a small apartment where I can raise my baby. And now James shows up, pretending to care. He doesn't deserve to be part of this, Amanda, not after everything he's done. Amanda leaned in and hugged her tightly. You're stronger than you know, Samantha, but if he keeps pushing, you may need to stand up to him, not for him, but for yourself and your baby. Make sure he never has the chance to hurt you again. Samantha nodded, though the thought of facing James again was daunting. He was persuasive, powerful, and skilled at manipulating people to get what he wanted. She knew she'd need to be stronger than ever to protect herself and her child from a past that seemed determined to resurface. That same evening, James sat in his luxurious apartment, staring at the report Liam had compiled on Samantha. The thought of her working as a waitress in a small restaurant made him uneasy. He couldn't understand why she hadn't come to him for help after the divorce. He had more than enough resources to ensure she never had to work again. But as he thought about it, the truth began to creep in. The realization that his own actions and words had destroyed her trust. He had spent so much time blaming Samantha for their failures that he had never stopped to reflect on the pain he had caused. Now, he couldn't shake the image of her struggling alone, and for the first time in years, James Carter began to feel the weight of his own regrets. James knew that if he wanted answers, he would have to confront Samantha again. This time, he wouldn't accept evasions or half-truths. He wanted the whole truth, and he wouldn't leave without it. Entering the restaurant for the third night in a row, James was aware that his persistence was pushing the limits. Still, he couldn't help himself. Ever since seeing Samantha in that simple uniform, working tirelessly to make ends meet, he hadn't been able to think of anything else. He needed to understand why she had shut him out completely, especially when it came to something as life-changing as her pregnancy. Samantha saw him as soon as he walked in, and a knot tightened in her stomach. She had expected him to give up, but here he was again. His presence brought a surge of anger and weariness. She tried to act like she hadn't noticed him, focusing on her work, but it was impossible to ignore his determined stride as he approached. Samantha, James said, his voice calm but firm. We need to talk. Samantha froze mid-step, gripping the tray in her hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white. James, I told you, I can't do this. Not here, not now. I'm not leaving without answers, he insisted, stepping closer. You can't keep avoiding me. I deserve to know why you decided to go through all of this alone. Samantha closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to calm herself. If you keep pushing like this, you're going to make me lose my job. This job is all I have right now, James. Please, just leave before things get worse. James shook his head, his frustration spilling over. Lose your job? Samantha, you don't need to do this. I can take care of you. I can take care of the baby. Why didn't you come to me for help? He took another step forward, reaching out to touch her arm, but Samantha stepped back quickly. Her voice trembled, heavy with emotion, as she replied, You don't understand. I didn't ask for your help because I don't trust you, James. You destroyed everything we had, everything I was. And now, you think you can just show up and fix it with money? That's not how this works." James opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Amanda appeared nearby. Noticing the tension, Amanda approached cautiously. "Samantha, is everything okay?" she asked, her disapproving gaze shifting briefly to James. Samantha nodded quickly, not taking her eyes off James. "Yes, I'm fine. I'll be right there." Amanda gave her a gentle tug on the arm. "Come on, there's a table waiting," she said, clearly making up an excuse to pull Samantha away from the uncomfortable encounter. James stood motionless as he watched Samantha walk away. Frustration and a deep sense of helplessness consumed him. He knew that pressing further in that moment would only make things worse. Reluctantly, he left the restaurant, though his thoughts remained in turmoil. Standing outside, James looked through the large glass window. He could see Samantha moving from table to table, her forced smile barely hiding the exhaustion on her face. Despite everything, there was a quiet determination in her movements, something he hadn't noticed before. It clashed with the image he held of her from the past. Back then, Samantha had been full of life, with an unshakable confidence and a spark in her eyes. She had been a dreamer, always brimming with ambitious ideas about the future. She had seemed like the perfect woman, but James, restless and searching for excitement elsewhere, had taken her for granted. Leaning against the wall of the building, arms crossed, James let his mind drift back to the beginning of it all. He remembered the first time he saw Samantha at a corporate event. She had been a brilliant marketing strategist, standing out with her articulate speech and magnetic energy. He had been enchanted by her confidence and drive, falling in love almost immediately. Their early days together had been nothing short of magical. He felt proud to have someone as inspiring as Samantha by his side. Their wedding had been a culmination of that love, and he could still hear her voice as she made her vows. She had spoken with tears in her eyes, promising, "I'll stand by your side through all the good times and the bad, believing in the man you are and the man you can become." Now, watching her from a distance, James couldn't help but wonder how he had let everything fall apart. He had loved her, yet he had allowed his selfishness and recklessness to ruin what they had. For the first time in years, James felt a pang of regret so deep it left him rooted to the spot. How had things gone so wrong? How had he lost the one person who had truly believed in him? Samantha wiped down a table and gave a warm smile to a customer, but James, watching her from outside, felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: regret. He had underestimated her, treating her as if she were just another aspect of his life, disposable when no longer convenient. Yet, seeing her now, working tirelessly with quiet strength, he realized how wrong he had been. Samantha wasn't the defeated woman he had belittled in his messages to mistresses. She was resilient, standing tall despite the burdens she carried, including a child he hadn't even known about. His mind drifted to the women he had cheated on Samantha with. They had been drawn to his status, his wealth, and the glittering life he offered: parties, luxury trips, and exclusivity. But none of them cared about who he was, or the dreams he once had. None of them had sacrificed for him like Samantha had. As he stood outside the restaurant, James began to wonder if all those betrayals had been worth the price he paid. Inside, Samantha could feel his gaze on her even without turning around. She knew he was there, watching. Amanda approached her quietly, concern etched on her face. "He's still out there. Do you want me to call someone to get him to leave?" "No," Samantha said, shaking her head. "He'll leave eventually." Amanda placed a supportive hand on Samantha's shoulder. "Are you okay? He's really bothering you." "I'll be fine," Samantha replied, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "He's just struggling to accept that he can't control everything." James stayed outside until Samantha finished her shift. He watched as she left the restaurant, Amanda walking beside her, as the two talked quietly. He thought about approaching her again, but hesitated. For the first time, he realized that maybe Samantha was right. Maybe he didn't deserve to be part of her life or her baby's life. As Samantha disappeared into the night, James stood still, grappling with the weight of his past choices. He knew he needed to change, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that it might already be too late to repair the damage he had caused. James's mansion was as cold and silent as ever, despite its grandeur. The sleek, minimalist design and wide corridors only amplified the emptiness, reflecting the emotional void he felt within. Sitting in his study with a glass of whiskey in hand, he found no comfort in the drink. Days had passed since his encounters with Samantha, yet his thoughts were consumed by memories of their marriage and regrets over choices that now felt irreversible. The sound of a car approaching broke his reverie. It was Claudine. He knew he couldn't avoid this conversation any longer. Since they'd returned from the restaurant, he had ignored her calls and messages, unable to pretend that everything was normal when his mind was elsewhere. Claudine entered the mansion with determined steps. Impeccably dressed as always, her face betrayed frustration and concern. She found James in his study, arms crossed as she glared at him. James, can you explain to me what's going on? She demanded. Why have you disappeared? Why don't you answer me anymore? James sighed, avoiding her eyes. I'm sorry, Claudine, I've just been distracted. Distracted? That's all you have to say? She shot back. You've been ignoring me for days, and now you expect me to accept that excuse? What's really going on? James hesitated. He knew Claudine was sharp and wouldn't be easily deceived. Still, he tried to deflect. I've been dealing with some personal matters, things from the past. They have nothing to do with you. Claudine narrowed her eyes, her voice lowering. This is about that woman at the restaurant, isn't it? I saw the way you looked at her. Who is she, James? He took a deep breath, the weight of the question pressing down on him. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. She's my ex-wife. Claudine's eyes widened in shock. Your ex-wife? And you didn't think that was important enough to tell me? James ran a hand through his hair in frustration, avoiding her gaze. It's not something I wanted to talk about. Things between us ended a long time ago. I haven't seen or spoken to Samantha in months. She blocked me from everything. This has nothing to do with what we have now. Claudine let out a bitter laugh. Nothing to do with it? James, she's pregnant. I'm not blind. I saw her belly. That's your baby, isn't it? That's why you're so shaken. James remained silent, his hesitation confirming Claudine's suspicion. Shaking her head, she stared at him in disbelief. You knew, didn't you? Or are you just trying to find out? That explains everything, why you've been so distant. You're obsessed with her, aren't you? Even though you don't know if the baby is yours or if she's already moved on with someone else. It's not like that, James said, trying to steady his voice. I don't know if the baby is mine, but if it is, I have to do the right thing. Claudine's anger boiled over. The right thing? Is that what you call disappearing, ignoring me for days, and then offering me nothing but half-truths? Now, after all this time, you've suddenly decided to be a responsible man? Where was that sense of duty when you betrayed her, or me? Her words struck him like a blow. James tried to respond, but Claudine cut him off. You're selfish, James, she continued. You discard people when they don't fit your plans anymore. And now, just because you feel guilty, you think you can fix everything? I want no part of this. She turned to leave, but James grabbed her arm. Claudine, please don't go. I just need some time to think. I'm confused, and I don't know what to do. Confused? She wrenched her arm free. Let me make it simple for you. Stay with your confusion. I'm out. Her footsteps echoed through the marble halls as she left, leaving James alone in the quiet mansion. He stood in the study, the weight of her words pressing down on him. She was right. He was selfish. His choices had always revolved around his own convenience, and now he was facing the consequences. The next morning, Claudine made a decision. She needed to hear the truth directly from Samantha. Dressed inconspicuously, she went to the restaurant and entered quietly, scanning the room until she spotted Samantha. She was waiting on a table, her pregnant belly visible as she carried a tray. Claudine watched her for a moment, taking in her tired yet dignified demeanor. Samantha was nothing like the woman she had expected. Finally, Claudine spoke. You're Samantha, right? Samantha turned, surprised. Yes. Can I help you? My name is Claudine. I'm James's girlfriend, she said bluntly. Samantha's face tensed, but she maintained her composure. And what do you want from me? I want to understand, Claudine said. I want to know why James is so fixated on you, and I want to know if the baby is his." Samantha hesitated, her patience clearly wearing thin. Finally, she said, "Yes, the baby is his, but that doesn't change anything. I don't want anything from James. You can tell him that, and tell him to stop looking for me." Claudine was silent for a moment, assessing the woman in front of her. Then she said softly, "I don't know how you've dealt with all of this. He used me too, just like he used you. And now?" Before Samantha could respond, Claudine turned and left the restaurant. That evening, she sent James a message. "I went to the restaurant and saw Samantha. She's pregnant with your baby. I can't believe you abandoned her, especially while she's carrying your child. I can only imagine what she's been through. You throw people away as if they mean nothing. I don't want to see you anymore. I'm leaving town. I hope one day you'll realize how destructive you are to everyone around you." James read Claudine's message while sitting on the sofa in his mansion. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. For the first time, he truly reflected on who he was and how he had treated the people in his life. He had toyed with feelings, prioritizing his ego, comfort, and desires above everything else. He couldn't stop picturing Samantha's face, exhausted but resolute as she worked to provide for herself and their child. He remembered how she had given up everything for him, how he had betrayed her, mocked her, and dismissed her sacrifices. Now, even Claudine was gone, and James was left alone with the bitter realization of what his actions had cost him. For the first time, he felt the crushing weight of accountability, knowing he had no one to blame but himself. James put his phone down, his head sinking into his hands. He realized now that his need to make things right wasn't about Samantha or Claudine. It was about him. For the first time, he understood that he needed to change, not out of guilt or desperation, but because he couldn't continue being the man he had become. He was not only destroying those around him, he was destroying himself. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight as James sat in his empty mansion, lost in thought. Finally, he picked up the phone and dialed Liam, the one person he trusted to give him honest advice. The line rang a few times before Liam answered, his voice groggy. "James, everything okay? It's late." "I need you, Liam," James said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Can you come over? It's important. I'm not doing well." There was a pause on the other end before Liam answered, "All right, give me 20 minutes." When Liam arrived at the mansion, he found James in the study, slumped in an armchair with a bottle of whiskey on the table beside him. The glass was empty, untouched, and James's expression was one of sheer exhaustion, as though the weight of the world was pressing down on him. "All right, James, I'm here. What's going on?" Liam asked, sitting across from him. James rubbed his hands over his face, trying to find the words. "I'm broken, Liam. I think I always have been. But now, everything is falling apart all at once, and I don't know how to fix it." "Fix what?" Liam asked, leaning forward. "Be straight with me. You didn't call me here for nothing." James took a deep breath, his thoughts tumbling out in a flood. "Samantha is pregnant. She's working in a restaurant, struggling to survive. I finally realized how horrible I was to her. I betrayed her, humiliated her, and abandoned her when she needed me most. And now Claudine is gone because she's figured out how selfish I am." Liam stayed silent, letting James continue. "I've become someone who uses people, Liam," James admitted, his voice breaking. "I use them to make myself feel better, to stroke my ego. And when they're no longer convenient, I throw them away. But it's not making me happy. If anything, I feel emptier than ever." Liam sat back, considering his friend's words. "Well," he said finally, "acknowledging all of that is a big step. But recognizing the problem isn't enough. The real question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know," James whispered. "I feel like I'm stuck in this cycle. Every time I try to be better, I just end up making things worse. How can I change? How can I fix all of this?" Liam sighed, choosing his words carefully. "James, change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. And it starts with honesty. Honesty with yourself and with others. You need to admit your mistakes and take responsibility for them. But more importantly, you need to act. Words aren't enough. You have to show through your actions that you're serious about becoming better." James nodded, though his doubts lingered. But I've hurt her so much, Liam. She doesn't trust me. How can I even begin to make amends? How can I get close to someone I've hurt so deeply? She doesn't even want to see me. You start small, Liam said firmly. Don't try to fix everything at once. That'll only come across as forced and selfish. Show her through consistent actions that you're committed to change, and not because you're trying to win her forgiveness or ease your guilt, but because you genuinely want to be a better person. James sat quietly, absorbing Liam's words. Deep down, he knew his friend was right. Change wouldn't be easy, but if he didn't try, he would remain stuck in the same destructive patterns. For the first time in years, James felt the faint flicker of hope. Hope that perhaps, with time and effort, he could finally become the man he had failed to be. James shook his head, letting Liam's words sink in. And Claudine, she left because she finally saw the kind of man I am. I think I used her, Liam. I wasn't fair to her. I just wanted someone to distract me from the mess my life had become, but in the end, I hurt her too. Claudine's an adult, James, Liam said firmly. She made the choice to leave because she saw something in you that she didn't want to be a part of. That's hard to accept, but maybe she did you a favor. Maybe you need this time alone to really reflect, without distractions. James stayed silent for a long moment, staring at the floor. Finally, he looked up at Liam, his tired eyes holding a faint glimmer of determination. I want to change, Liam. I want to be a better person. I can't keep living like this. Liam nodded. Then start. Don't wait for tomorrow, and don't wait for someone else to push you. Start now. And remember, real change isn't easy. It's going to hurt. But in the end, it'll be worth it. After their conversation, James felt a small sense of relief. It wasn't the solution to everything, but it was a beginning. He knew the path ahead would be difficult, and that regaining trust, especially Samantha's, might never happen. But for the first time, he knew he had to try. Not for others, but for himself. After Liam left, James sat alone in his study, staring at an old photo from his wedding to Samantha. In the picture, her face radiated hope and love. He couldn't help but wonder if it was possible to recover even a fragment of the connection they once shared. For now, he knew only one thing. He had to start rebuilding his life from the ground up, and this time, he had to do it right. That night, James made a decision. He needed to confront the man he had become and take responsibility for the damage he had caused. In his mind, Samantha was where it all began. Not only his greatest mistake, but also his greatest opportunity to redeem himself. Yet, he also understood that before he could approach her, he needed to face his own flaws. The next morning, James woke up with a slightly lighter feeling in his chest. He picked up his phone and, for the first time in his life, booked a session with a therapist. He knew that real change required more than promises to himself. It required understanding the destructive patterns that had defined his life. Over the next few days, James began to dig into the parts of his life he had long ignored. He confronted painful memories, his darkest mistakes, and the choices that had turned him into someone he no longer wanted to be. A week later, armed with a new perspective, James decided it was time to take the next step, reaching out to Samantha. However, he knew showing up at the restaurant again would only put her on edge. He needed to approach her in a way that gave her control. He composed a short, sincere message. Samantha, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'd like the chance to talk with you face to face. I don't want to force anything, just an honest conversation where I can explain myself and listen to you. Please let me know where and when works best for you. If you don't want to, I'll respect your decision. James didn't expect an immediate response, and none came. He spent the rest of the day trying to keep himself occupied, but the anxiety gnawed at him. The thought of Samantha ignoring or rejecting him was hard to stomach, though he knew it was a possibility he had to accept. Meanwhile, Samantha sat on the worn sofa in her small apartment, reading James's message for the fourth time. Her initial reaction had been to delete it immediately, but something made her hesitate. Do you think he deserves a chance? Samantha asked Amanda, who was sitting on the other side of the room eating popcorn. Amanda frowned, considering the question. I think he deserves to hear some hard truths, that's for sure. But honestly, only you can decide. He was a jerk, no doubt about it. But maybe he's trying to change. Just don't let him manipulate you again." Samantha let out a heavy sigh. The idea of giving James even the smallest opening into her life was infuriating. But there was a part of her, a small, quiet part, that wanted closure. Not to hurt him, but to release the pain she had been carrying for so long. Finally, she began typing a reply. "Tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the park near my work. Don't be late." The next day, James arrived at the park early. Nervousness coursed through him, something he hadn't felt in years. He sat on a bench, watching families play and couples stroll hand in hand. The scene made him think about what he had lost, or perhaps what he had never had the courage to build. When Samantha arrived, James stood immediately. She looked tired, but her posture exuded a quiet strength that made him feel small in her presence. "Thank you for coming," James said as she sat down on a bench across from him. "I came because I want to make things clear," Samantha replied, crossing her arms. "But make it quick. I don't have time to waste." James nodded, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I just want to start by apologizing. For everything. For what I did to our marriage. For cheating on you. For humiliating you. And for not being there when you needed me most. I know words aren't enough, but I needed to say it." Samantha remained silent, her eyes fixed on James with an expression he couldn't quite read. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke, her voice laced with pain. "You destroyed me, James. You took everything I was and tore it apart. I lost my career, my pride, and my faith in people. But I had no choice but to carry on." "I know," James replied softly, his tone sincere. "And you're stronger than I'll ever be. Seeing you at the restaurant, working so hard, made me realize just how selfish I've been. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or to make things right between us. I'm here because I need to change, and seeing you made me realize how much I have to work on." Samantha studied him for a long moment, her face unreadable. "I don't know if I believe you, James. You've always been good with words, but change is more than just saying the right things." "I know," James admitted without hesitation. "I don't expect you to believe me now, but I'll show you through my actions that I'm serious. I don't want to take anything from you or interfere in your life. I just want the chance to be a father to this baby. If you'll let me." His words caught Samantha off guard. For months, she had prepared herself to raise her child alone, never imagining that James would want to step into the role of a father. She hesitated, torn between her anger and the possibility of giving her baby a chance to have both parents involved. Finally, she said, "I'll think about it." She stood up, fixing him with a determined gaze. "But James, if you let me down again, there won't be a second chance." James nodded, feeling grateful for even the smallest glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Samantha. And please, let me know if there's anything you need. I won't interfere, but I want to be here if you need support." Samantha gave him a small nod before walking away, leaving James sitting alone on the bench. He stayed there for a long time after she left, feeling as though a small step had been taken. But he knew the road ahead would be difficult and full of obstacles. For the first time in years, though, he felt ready to face those challenges, not to repair his image or alleviate his guilt, but to become someone he could respect. In the days following their conversation, James experienced a mixture of hope and self-reflection. For the first time in years, his thoughts weren't consumed by million-dollar deals or the luxuries of his lifestyle. Instead, he focused on the person he wanted to become, someone who wasn't defined by selfishness and pride. He respected Samantha's request for space, but couldn't help but think about her words. One evening, while sorting through old papers and emails, he stumbled across something unexpected, a letter written by Samantha during the darkest days of their marriage. It was tucked away among the divorce documents, clearly something she had never intended for him to find. Her handwriting was unmistakable, and as James began to read, a lump formed in his throat. "James, I still remember the man I fell in love with. The man who was kind, driven, and made me believe we could conquer the world together. But that man is gone, replaced by someone who makes me feel small, useless, and unwanted. For so long, I've tried to understand what I did wrong, but maybe it's not something I can fix. Maybe the problem is that you never wanted a partner. You wanted someone to stand behind you while you chased your dreams. And I did. But now I realize that in the process, I forgot my own. I'm writing this because I still believe in the man you could be, but I can no longer be the woman you need me to be. I deserve more than this, and so do you. I hope one day you understand what you've lost, and I hope it's not too late for you to change. The letter hit James like a blow to the chest. Samantha had seen more potential in him than he had ever seen in himself, and he had thrown it all away. He realized now that he had taken her love for granted, assuming it would endure no matter how poorly he treated her. Over the next few weeks, James began to take small steps to help Samantha, always respecting her boundaries. He started by purchasing items for the baby, clothes, bottles, and essentials. Instead of delivering them himself, he left the boxes on her doorstep with short, unobtrusive notes. "I hope this helps in some way. Take care, James." Samantha, though appreciative, didn't respond to his messages. Accepting his help was a practical choice, but opening her life to him again was something she still feared deeply. With 2 months to go until the baby's arrival, James's anxiety grew. He didn't know what life as a father would look like, but he was determined to be there. He sent Samantha occasional messages to check on her. "How are you feeling today? If you need anything, please let me know. Do you have help with groceries or errands? I don't want you to overdo it." Though she rarely replied, James persisted, keeping his distance but staying attentive. He even found himself returning to the restaurant where Samantha worked, standing discreetly across the street to watch her through the glass. He saw her slowing down as her pregnancy progressed, her exhaustion evident. One evening, Amanda noticed him again and said to Samantha, "He's out there again." Samantha sighed, leaning back in her chair and rubbing her belly. "I know," she replied quietly. "Are you going to talk to him?" Amanda asked. "No," Samantha said firmly. "He made his choices, and I've made mine." But deep down, a small part of her wondered if she was being entirely fair. Almost 9 months into her pregnancy, the wall she had built around herself was beginning to crack, just slightly. Samantha began to feel constant pain and struggled to keep up with her duties at the restaurant. Eventually, she realized she couldn't push her body any further and made the difficult decision to stop working. It was a choice that weighed heavily on her, knowing how much she depended on that job, but her body simply couldn't take it anymore. James found out through Amanda, who called him out of concern. "She doesn't want you to know," Amanda admitted, "but she's in a lot of pain, James. She needs help. If you've really changed, prove that you care." That same day, James reached out to Samantha and offered to take her to a doctor's appointment. At first, she was hesitant, but Amanda's persistence and her own worsening condition made her agree. The appointment turned into a life-changing moment for James. Sitting beside Samantha, he heard the baby's heartbeat during the ultrasound for the first time. The sound was fast and steady, filling the room with an energy he had never experienced before. James stared at the monitor, seeing the outline of the baby, his son. Tears welled up in his eyes and streamed down his face. "That's him," James whispered, overcome with emotion. He looked at Samantha, who nodded silently, equally moved but holding back her words. Seeing James so vulnerable and emotional stirred something deep within her, something she wasn't ready to confront. After the appointment, James drove Samantha home. As they arrived, he hesitated before asking, Can I see the baby's room?" Samantha considered his request for a moment before agreeing. "Of course. Come on." She led him into a small, lovingly prepared room. The walls were painted a soft blue, and a modest crib stood beside a rocking chair. Everything was simple but carefully chosen. James stepped inside and stopped, overcome by the sight. He ran his hands over the crib and the chair, his voice breaking as he said, "You did this all on your own. I'm so sorry, Samantha. You're incredible." Tears filled his eyes again. "I don't deserve any of this, but I want to be part of this baby's life. I want to be a real father." Samantha felt her own tears begin to fall. For the first time in years, she caught a glimpse of the James she had fallen in love with so long ago. Without thinking, she stepped forward and embraced him. James held her gently, as if afraid she might break, and in that moment, the distance between them seemed to shrink. The very next day, Samantha went into labor. Amanda called James immediately, and he rushed to the hospital, his heart pounding with worry and anticipation. When he arrived, he found Samantha in the middle of contractions, surrounded by nurses. He took her hand, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'm here," he told her, meeting her eyes. After hours of labor, the baby's cries finally filled the room. James stood frozen, overwhelmed, as the doctor handed the baby, a boy, to Samantha. She looked down at her son with tears streaming down her face, and James felt his heart shatter and heal at the same time. When Samantha passed the baby to him, James held him as if cradling the entire world. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Hi, little one. I'm your father." He looked back at Samantha, still holding the baby. "Samantha, I'm so sorry for everything. You're the most incredible woman I've ever known. I never should have hurt you. I love you. I always have. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Samantha looked at James, tears streaming down her face. She knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain, but in that moment, with their son in her arms, she felt a glimmer of hope. "I believe in second chances, James," she said softly, "but you're going to have to work for it." "I will," James promised, his voice full of emotion. "I swear I will." In the small hospital room, surrounded by the quiet hum of monitors and the soft cries of their newborn, the foundation of something new was laid. For years, everything between them had seemed broken beyond repair, but now there was a chance to rebuild. As the years passed, James transformed into a man Samantha barely recognized, one filled with empathy, commitment, and a dedication to those he loved. The man who had once been consumed by pride and selfishness became a true partner, helping to heal the wounds he had caused. Samantha, who had carried so much pain and disappointment, slowly allowed herself to trust again. Brick by brick, the walls around her heart came down. She rediscovered the man she had fallen in love with, now redefined by his efforts to change. Their son, Theodore, named after Samantha's late father, who had always believed in second chances, grew up surrounded by love. James became the kind of father he had never been sure he could be, present for every step, every milestone, and every bedtime story. The simple joys of parenthood, sleepless nights, backyard games, and quiet moments became the foundation of a new life. Together, James and Samantha rebuilt their family with patience, determination, and a shared belief in the power of redemption. It wasn't always easy, but through love and perseverance, they proved that even broken things can be made whole again. James and Samantha renewed their vows in an intimate ceremony, surrounded by their closest friends and family. It was a celebration not just of their love, but of the remarkable journey they had undertaken together, a story of redemption, resilience, and the strength of forgiveness. Their son, Theodore, stood proudly by their side, holding the rings that symbolized their commitment to a new beginning, one built on mutual effort and deep understanding. The home they had created was filled with laughter and warmth. Every moment became an opportunity to teach and learn, with the hard lessons of the past forming the foundation of a stronger relationship. Respect and care guided every decision they made, and Samantha knew she had made the right choice in giving James and their family a second chance. For his part, James never stopped showing his gratitude. Every day he worked to prove that this second chance was the greatest gift he had ever received. Their happiness wasn't built on perfection, but on love, dedication, and an unwavering determination to grow together. It was a quiet yet powerful joy, rooted in the knowledge that their love had endured trials that might have broken others. Together, James and Samantha wrote a new story, one that demonstrated the incredible power of forgiveness and the possibility of transformation. Their journey proved that even the deepest wounds could heal with effort, repentance, and the courage to start anew. If this heartfelt story of love, redemption, and second chances resonated with you, please support our channel by giving it a like and subscribing. Don't miss more inspiring stories like this one, filled with emotion and triumph over adversity. Click the video on the screen now to experience another unforgettable narrative that will leave you moved and inspired. See you in the next video.